Hi, welcome to Manifest, working with elements of nature for sexual healing. My name is Redvi Azad, and I am the Director of Education and Programs at the HEAL Project. The HEAL Project is an educational initiative where we work to prevent and end childhood sexual abuse through healing the wounds of sexual oppression and embracing sexual liberation.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ignacio Hutia Shaiti Rivera, and I am the founder and executive director of the HEAL Project. And you are joining us today for Manifest. We are going to start with talking about manifestation and what that means, and what sexual healing means to us in this context. So when we think about manifestation, we're always manifesting because we're always thinking about things, right? And our thoughts, when we think about manifestations, we think about our thoughts informing our energy, and our energy manifests in our experiences. So this is not simply to say that if I think something, it will happen, but it's the process in between from thinking to the getting that we're going to be talking about, that what manifestation is really about. It's not a quick fix or a magic button for people, but it is intentional, beautiful and spiritual work. If this is something that you like to do, we realize that there are many ways of finding healing, especially around sexual violence. And this is just one way that has worked for myself and for Redvi as well. So we want to share that. When we talk about sexual healing, we are being very specific that there is no cookie cutter model about sexual healing. This is your idea of what you need, right? What do you need for sexual healing? What is sexual healing for you? Is it to be naked by yourself? Is it to have a sexual partner? Is it to view yourself naked for the first time? Is it to love your body? There are many ways that sexual healing can present itself to us. And so it is for us to think and decide, what is sexual healing for me and how can I start shifting my thoughts around that? And so an acronym that I tend to use is TEAR. So it's thoughts plus our energy equal it affects our perception of reality. So if we think something, our energy sometimes shift, right? If we think negatively, sometimes we get upset because we have that negative thought in our body. And that affects our perception of reality. So that is something that we all do. We all do. So we want to be more conscious of our thought processes and what those thought processes do within our body, and then how we react to those thought processes. Yeah, and that really talks a lot about our brain, right, Redvi? And Redvi loves talking about the brain.
I do. I really enjoy the intersection of scientific ideas with the spiritual and with the healing aspects of elements of nature. So yeah, and an example I like to use is, sometimes you learn a new word you've never heard before, and then suddenly you see it everywhere. Suddenly it's like everybody's always using it, and you're like, well, how did I not see this before? But that actually, it's a common scientific phenomena. It's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomena, or the frequency illusion. When we try to think about something, what basically happens, and this has been proven, is that we are more likely to identify and see that idea and pattern in the world around us. So the way I like to think about manifesting, it's less about, I'm going to think about this thing and it will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's my fault. That's not really the case, right? The world is a imperfect place, it's unpredictable, and things happen in ways that we really don't have a lot of control over. But by manifesting and putting an energy and intention that really works for us, what we literally do is that we change our brain in a way that it's more likely to see it, our perception of reality changes, and that can make our lives, our experience of living so different. So yeah, and this is again goes back to what the fabric of the universe is made of. I happen to have a background in physics, and again, another piece I really love talking about these ideas is that the universe is literally made of energy. Everything, matter by itself, when you break it down, it comes from energy. So we are energy. We are the same way that everything around us is. So when we put out something that's high energy, and that is ideas that are positive, that are inviting, that are loving, that are accepting and compassionate, what we do is that we attract similar energy towards ourselves, right? We are more likely to be seeing that kind of energy in the world outside. And at the same time, when we have low energy, when we are feeling down, when we are feeling upset, which happens, again, not this is part of life, right? What happens is that then we unfortunately also more likely to see that in the world around us, and our perception of the reality and the universe shifts in that way. So yeah, this is the piece I really enjoy talking about when it comes to this topic.
I think a lot about vibration when I think about when we are bartering with a higher power. We've all done it. You know, like there's a point where something horrible is happening, you're just experiencing so much bad stuff. And, you know, some of us get on our hands and knees, some of us, you know, sit there and think, and it's like God, Jehovah, Allah, whoever we are, you know, praying to, it's like, please make this right. Please, I will do anything if you do A, B, C, and D, right? And when I think about high vibration, it's like when we think about prayer and what we want, that is a very low vibrational place to start from, right? Because you're in a negative place. You're coming from that negativity, rather than when we do manifestation, we often we talk as if the thing has already happened, right? So we are trying to shift, right? We're not saying, please help me do this thing. It's like, I will, I have done it. I have done this thing that will help me. And then we take the steps towards that thing. So when we pray, when we talk to God, when we, you know, have a conversation with a higher power, it is always through a higher vibration, not a low vibration. And we often get that mixed up because we don't have the intention there. And so it's like, oh, that's right. Let me tap into this thing that I haven't tapped into before. Let me just beg right now. So it's shifting that intentionality, that just thinking deeper about it. Right? And so we want to give 4 principles of manifestation that could be helpful. So we talked about this already. Number 1 is raising your vibration, right? We talk about having a high vibration, but how do you actually raise it? And Redvi spoke to that already. And it is like clearing negativity, right? So first is identifying what that negativity is. And sometimes that's really hard to like figure out what person might be toxic in your life, or a job, or, you know, anything that might be negative, or maybe you're being negative to yourself. So what is the negative thing? And it's about working to try to clear that. And also to clear the disbelief in the power that you have, or that we have, to heal ourselves. In order to manifest, you have to actually believe that this is possible. If you don't believe it, then that's fine. And it's probably not the vehicle to use, right? So hiring your vibration is simply really trying to be kind to yourself, really showing gratitude. It is about drinking water, eating right, doing the things that feel good, and that is just hiring your vibration, right? And then 2 is to be concise. So this is really important, because when we're manifesting, we really want to think. It's almost like how people say, if you had 3 wishes, what would you wish for? And then people say, I wish I had $1 million, but we're not talking about where those $1 million came from, right? So it could have been like somebody stole $1 million from somebody else and gave it to you, or somebody robbed a bank and gave it to you. We want to talk about the details in between. So I want $1 million, which is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about sexual healing. So I would like to be a positive sexual being. I want to have good sexual relationships. I want to be more comfortable with my body. And even more specific than that, I want to be able to love my body. I want to be able to not have sex with the lights off. I want to be able to talk to somebody about my desires and my fears. I want to talk about my trauma. I want to talk about negotiating, right? So be very concise about the things that maybe you don't have, that you really, really want. And once you start naming those things and getting very specific, you are really opening up the door to all the things that you are actually pushing yourself to do by the thought itself. The thought is informing the action, and then the action is informing the overall high vibration of feeling, right? And so number 3.
Yeah, thank you, Ignacio. I really, before I jump to number 3, I really love the idea of the prayer to our higher being, whatever it may be, of not thinking of that as a withholding entity, that we need to beg and ask for something, rather that whatever is out there is always unconditionally available to us, right? We don't need to be good for it to get it. We don't need to be begging for it. We don't need to be, whatever it is. I really like that idea of like, no, our higher being is, even if it's connected to ourselves, right, it is always present no matter what. So thank you for that. Yeah, so number 3, I think that goes back to the idea of how do we raise the vibration and clear the negativity, is the acronym T, which stands for think, experience, and accept. So the thinking process is, you are thinking about or manifest something, being very specific, being concise, and thinking about, okay, this is what I want to bring into my life. This is how I want to build this relationship with myself or others. This is how I want to show up. And it's through that process of thinking, when I get our thinking brain going, that if we slow down and pay attention, we notice there are feelings coming up. We can access the feeling brain, the feelings that wherever they may, there might be anger, there might be disappointment, there might be fear, there might be excitement. Whatever it is will show up, and we get to experience that. And that process of experiencing, I think that's the meat of this, or the tofu of it. It's like you go into, really, if you're journaling, however you experience your feelings and surface your feelings, you can experience that. And even if it's negative feelings are, part of who we are. So we want to experience that. We want to let it surface. We want to have it come out, be right in front of us. And once it's there, then we can have the clarity to then plan out, okay, I want to build this type of relationship with my body, with my sexual self. And here is, I think, what makes sense for me to do. I can seek out therapy who can provide certain service for me. I can read some books or watch some videos or spend some time taking care of myself, and again, noticing what comes up. And the last step, accept, what I love about that is I really like using the word self-acceptance, because it's so much about just observe. Let's just observe what happens. It doesn't always have to end in a positive, high place. Whatever happens, it's us. It's, nobody is perfect and nothing is perfect. Our feelings will just come up, and accepting what happens in that process is a very powerful tool. Sometimes I think when we try so hard and don't get what we want, it can be frustrating, and we can get stuck in being hard on ourselves. But instead, we make mistakes, let's accept it. We can't get rid of all the negativity that we want to. It's okay, we can accept that too. That's just part of being human. And something Ignacio you said that I really like on this one is, let the thought inform the feelings, and let the feelings take out the energy. And it's really true. You start with thinking, you let the feelings rise and experience them. And it's the feelings that can then help you bring out the energy that you want to put out into the universe. So then the last principle, the 4th principle, is be open to receiving. So that means being patient. This is not, time is not linear, and we put out the energy we want to put out because it improves our own experience of reality. It improves the way that we carry ourselves, but it does not mean that we are going to get what we want in the way we want when we want it. A saying I like to say is that this spirit, however you define it, will give us what we need when we need it, when spirit thinks we need it. And these ideas may not always be in the way that we're like, okay, boom, 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 here's how I'm going to get from A to B. It's a little bit more, non-linear than that. And also, again, it's a journey. Spirit, your higher being, your higher vibration, the energy, whatever it is you connect with, it's not withholding. And however you land, let's just accept that as part of the process.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I definitely want to bring up the concept or the idea of ritual here, because in manifestation work, a lot of manifestation work is rituals. Sometimes we might do a manifestation ritual that is in the moment, one time, right? And then other times, or a manifestation ceremony, that is one time. And then we might do a ritual that might be, I am going to work with this manifestation for a month or a year or 6 months. We can do it however we want. For the next weekend, I'm going to be saying this thing. I'm going to be really thinking about this, right? So when we think about ritual, we want to make a clear distinction between a ritual and a habit or a routine. Right? Have you ever, got in your car, drove somewhere, and then was like, oh, wait a minute, how did I get here? Right? Because you're so used to that route that you're not even like looking, right? It's like you just ended up there, right? That is a habit or a routine, right? We don't have to think about the thing. And so with a ritual, we want, that is the difference. We are thinking about it. So a ritual is not a habit or a routine, because a habit or routine is just a repeated action, right? And sometimes it's just something that we have in our brains. But a ritual is symbolism, intent, ceremony, awareness, meaning that is connected to a routine, right? So it has to have the meaning. You're constantly interacting with it. You're thinking about it. So it isn't get in the car and show up. It's like really thinking about every turn you make, what the scenery is, like all of the things in between, which is hard because we do a lot of things as humans. We're working, we're doing so many things, and we end up in a lot of habits. So this is the good work of manifestation. It makes us come to ourselves and really think. Just like when we thought about the 4 principles, being concise is really thinking about things and really honoring that ritual for yourself, however that may be. So now we want to get into the 4 elements of nature and some of the ways that we've used it in our manifestation work. And there are a lot of ways. These are just a few ways, and we really want people to be creative and open their minds, because this is your practice. Manifestation is what you make of it. It's yours. You have total and complete power. And I really want to say that you actually have the power, because you're doing the thinking, you're doing the shifting, and you are making space for whatever it is. I don't care if it takes a month, a year, or 2, you're still putting in that work. All right, so the first element that I want to talk about is air. And so air, its association is with mental health. Right? And so whenever we want to probably do some work around manifestation for our well-being, our mental well-being, this is a good element to work with. And it symbolizes clarity, clearing, and growth. To name a few. And some of the ways that we can do manifestation with that is when we think of air, we think of breath. So we can be doing simple breathing exercises, just connecting with our bodies. That's it. Sometimes people actually forget how powerful breathing is. I mean, literally, we do it every single day. And this is the thing that is like almost like this routine, right? Like we're breathing without knowing it. And sometimes when we're stressed, people are like, breathe, because we're like, right? And so breathing in and of itself is such a beautiful thing, like connecting with your own breath and how it comes in and out of your body. And that could be very grounding. Singing, yelling, is another form of using breath. Singing in my native spirituality is called the breath of life. When we sing, it is life. We are bringing life into ourselves. So breath can be, air can be played with in a lot of ways. It can be being out in nature, but we're going to talk about earth in a little bit as well. So some of these things kind of like go together. And so with air, a lot of the ways that I use air is usually through breath and meditation, and really trying to ground and connect in that way.
The next element we want to talk about is fire. So fire is associated with desire, with passion, with creativity, and it symbolizes transformation and purification, motivation. So some examples of fire around us are any kind of heat that you may have, any source of heat that you may have around you. If I really like the sun, just knowing if I can see the sun. I live in New England, I don't get a lot of sunny days, but when it's there, just knowing its warmth, its light is present in my life. And cooking, again, interacting with heat is one way. And going into like sexual healing, what I really actually personally enjoy is like heating blankets, some soothing, awesome source of heat that can really feel like a hug, like I'm giving myself a hug, right? Or when doing rituals, putting a lot of candles around me to look at, interact with. Sometimes you can build it if you have outside access to safely make a fire, you know, putting whatever negativity you may have or whatever memories you don't want to be reminded of is writing it down on something and just giving it to the fire for it to take care of it, to take care of whatever it is, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that we can bring the element of fire into our lives. I also sometimes really enjoy if I get lucky with some great sunlight and it's coming through the window. It's like take a nap under the sun. Let the rays just go through your body, and it can be, honestly, lay down and masturbate under the sun. Let this be an experience that is like very much engaging with this higher power that's outside.
Yes, thank you. I think also I love using fire myself when I have done some self-loving rituals, especially when I am not able to be sexual with other people because I'm in my PTSD, mode. And so I love to light candles all around me and really center myself and just either be naked with myself, be with myself, masturbate or anything, and using just the fire for like this, a purification and transformation of myself, and really thinking about that. So I integrate like a lot of, just meditating with that. So that works really well. And then earth, I love earth a lot. And earth is associated with the physical body. And its symbol is like grounding, absorption, also transmuting. And basically like using the earth is like walking in nature, using crystals, hiking, hugging a tree, laying on grass, going camping. Like I think, and there's ecotherapy. There's so many ways that people don't realize that the earth itself is such a healing property for us. And just sitting in grass, laying in grass. When I feel absolutely just out of control sometimes, I literally have to go outside and hug a tree or be barefoot on grass. And just, and the transmuting, sometimes I imagine all the negative energy just coming out of my body, going through my feet into the earth, and asking Mother Earth to transmute that into positivity back into my body, through my feet, all through my body. Like just visualizing that really, just sparks something wide open for me. So I love grounding. Grounding really works for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really agree with that. I found being closer to nature absolutely crucial for my own healing. And it's like at some point I had the awareness that I couldn't be in cities anymore and I had to be close to nature. And over the years, I've really seen the difference it makes to be able to have that direct connection with nature, with Mother Earth, to be able to walk on a piece of earth without your shoes on. That's so powerful. So the last element is water, and that's my favorite because I'm a water sign. I have so much water. And it's connected with our emotions. Water is the sign of emotions. It symbolizes cleansing, it symbolizes clarity, flow, release. So water is, it's the sign of life. It's what gives us life. And if you think about it, they say something like 3/4 of our bodies are water. So really interacting with that element, however it is, if, through bathing, talking to water, I'll explain this a little bit more. It's like, sometimes really hard to give ourselves what we need. But what's been actually shown is that water, the molecules of water really respond to the kind of energy we give to it. So there are studies that show, like, if you talk to a glass of water in a positive way, give it a lot of good energy, that changes the vibration of the water. So imagine doing that, giving it a lot of love, giving it a lot of compassion, and then drinking that, bringing that energy back into your body, right? And then, yeah, doing a lot of offerings to water. You can, if there is a body of water near you, you can interact with it. There's a river next to me, which I love going to it and just talking to it. This river that just washes away. Sometimes even visualizing a liquid that is like a water that's like warm, nice temperature. Sometimes I visualize something like honey, like very smooth honey, just washing over me and clearing my anxieties, clearing everything that is like blocking my energy. So water is a powerful element.
Yes, I love water. I use water all the time, and there are like all these other ways too. Like when it rains, that's a beautiful time to just like connect with water because it's coming straight from earth, straight from the source. And it's like, what a beautiful thing to like let water that's coming, you know, from the earth just like fall all over you. There's also spiritual baths. Lots of people do spiritual baths, where it's just water itself, but some people add certain elements to it, like oils and flowers and things like that, and really put intention to this bath, this water that's going to go over your body for clarity and cleansing. I love the drinking of the water, and I also use crystals. Sometimes using crystals also from the earth. If you want to open up your heart chakra, use rose quartz. You throw some rose quartz in your water, let it stay there for a couple of hours. You have literally created a rose quartz elixir, and you drink that, and you are drinking those beautiful high vibrational properties of rose quartz. So there's a lot of things, and be sure that some crystals you can't put in water because they will dissolve. So make sure you know your crystals. And so these four elements are just a little tip of the iceberg of how we can use what's all around us. We don't have to buy anything. We use all around us to help us in our healing. Mother Nature is there to support us, and we have the power to do this manifestation. I want to share like one ritual that I have done for myself and my own sexual healing, which uses water and earth. Which is a lot of times before I am going to be sexually interactive with someone, especially a new person, or if I'm nervous, or if I am triggered in some way, I like to use water as a cleansing, right? As at first using earth to ground myself and say, this is okay. This is something that I'm dealing with, and I want to center myself and make sure that what I'm doing is exactly what I want and not for the other person. And I want to clear all that negative energy from me when I go and enter into this space, because I want to create a new vibration with this person, right? And so it is all the intent behind it, so that that doesn't necessarily mean that my maybe lower vibration things might not peak up, but I am interacting with it in a way, and I am possibly having a way to help myself if those things come up, right? Is there something I need to do? Do I need to sit down? And so this is how you can engage and have the power for yourself without apology, because we are healing, and we shouldn't be sorry for a healing, you know. This is what we need for ourselves.
Yeah, so some ways that I've incorporated manifesting and energy work into my life is when I buy a new sex toy, or sometimes I make a new sex toy. I really like to manifest a positive energy, good energy into it, an energy of how this is going to help my body heal and give me joy and pleasure, or just connection with myself. So, and I'm aware that how the more I give this intentional energy to the toy, the more I will be receiving it. The partners that are using it with me, how that impacts the energy that I'm bringing into it, and even using natural elements to give that kind of energy to to the toys that I have, using crystals, rocks, using earth, using water, all of that to give the energies that I want, bringing it really intentionally into my own sex life and sexual healing.
Yes, and I'll say one last thing about crystals. I've definitely used crystals in sex, like having crystals on people's bodies and working specifically with the sacral chakra to just really build that, you know, beautiful high energy right in that area. And, you know, that really puts me in a good headspace. It puts me in a good headspace. So there's tons of ways that we can be creative, open up our minds, step out of the box on how we have the power to heal ourselves with our own minds. And everyday things that are around us. And so thank you so much for joining us for Manifest. And please don't forget to follow us on social media. We are Heal to End, HEAL, the number 2, END, Heal to End on all social media platforms. Sign up for our newsletter. We are healtoend.org. Send in questions. We answer questions all the time from folks around sexuality, gender, sexual trauma. And of course, we cannot survive without donations. So please, please, if you can, any donation is accepted. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Bryant. I'm here with two of my fellow colleagues, Lucy Del Guadio and Adelaide Khan. And we're here to talk to you about military sexual assault, violence, trauma. And there's a lot that's been going on of late. Many of you, I hope that all of you have now heard the story of Vanessa Guillen at this point, which really has mobilized grassroots efforts like the one that Lucy and myself are a part of. And then we have folks at organizations like Protect Our Defenders, like Adelaide, who have been fighting this for years, knowing that service women are a particularly vulnerable population when it comes to military sexual assault, violence, and harassment. It's a male-dominated profession. And those of us who go into it, we know what we're signing up for, but it's no longer the cost of admission for the military. And a lot of us are fighting to change that now. And so we hope this will be an enlightening conversation. We're going to flub through it, probably just because it's Zoom and we're all at home. So, but we hope that you learn from this discussion as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adelaide, who's going to give a little bit more of the stats and some of what's been grounding the work that's happened preceding Vanessa Guillen's tragic death at Fort Hood, and the work that we're trying to do now going forward. So, Adelaide?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So I'm with the organization Protect Our Defenders. We were founded in 2011 after it became apparent that military sexual violence was not necessarily getting the national attention that it deserved. And so we were founded to solely focus on the epidemic of military sexual assault and violence in the military. And every year we push through, and with the support of obviously grassroots organizations and other organizations dedicated to this issue, different legislative changes that help make the process better for reporting sexual violence in the military, but there's obviously a lot of room for improvement. So just to give an example of the scale, because it's truly mind-blowing when the numbers are actually revealed. In fiscal year 2018, 20,500 service members were sexually assaulted or raped in the services. This is only counting active duty service members. This is not counting civilians. This is not counting children. This is not counting people who live in a different country, who might be living alongside a base. And to Melissa's point, 13,000 of those were women. So it's truly mind-boggling how big of a problem this is, and the rates are only going up. And we won't receive this year's data until next year, but we based on the trends, it's not an issue that's going away. So with that, Lucy.
Hi. Yeah. So my name is Lucy Del Guadio. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and a military sexual trauma. So I don't want to say trauma, but I'm a survivor, and every day it's a process. And the recent light has really, the Vanessa Guillen case has really brought a lot of us together in order to fight this fight and to really make it known what is happening in our military today and every day. And it was a very bold move of many service women, veterans, that we decided to form a coalition to really fight and make a change. And that's, bless you. But it was, there's something in the air right now that really gave us the strength to go forward and to have more of a voice and to tell our stories and to share with others what we actually experienced. It's been an interesting movement, I would say, the last 70 plus days.
Yeah, we got started on 4th of July weekend when Vanessa Guillen's remains were found outside of Fort Hood. And Lucy and I jumped on a Zoom call with about 30 or 40 other women veterans. I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, former Army captain, and it was an outpouring of emotion and of trauma. A lot of us felt re-triggered, re-victimized in some ways by it. There's also something that I tend to point out whenever I testify before Congress or listen to really anyone will listen, is that it's even a sharper problem, it seems, that we're seeing for our Black and Brown service members and our Black and Brown veterans as well. And it's something that follows us throughout our life. Like the reason why we all got onto this painful yet cathartic call the 4th of July weekend in order to start this grassroots movement in support of Vanessa Guillen's legacy. It was because a lot of us, you know, the T stands for the trauma, military sexual trauma, and a lot of us still deal with it, whether it's harassment. I call the harassment death by 1,000 cuts. It's constant, it's daily when you're serving on active duty, at least was my experience, of comments about physique, about sexual innuendo, all sorts of things. And a permissive environment for that type of harassment can lead to assault. It can lead to other violence against women and men, because men are survivors too. And I know we'll tease all this stuff out later, but all of those emotions were coming to a head, and Vanessa Guillen's tragic death galvanized this movement to where we finally said, just no more, no mas. We're not going to do this anymore. And I'm grateful, at least, you know, for Don Christensen and for Adelaide, working at Protect Our Defenders, who've always been chipping away at this. But now it looks like we finally have the wind at our backs, and we're finally going to get through some meaningful legislation that will be tangible and will actually do something beyond a lot of the gradual incremental progress that we've seen. But we're angry, we're full of rage, we're full of pain, but we're channeling all of that into action these days.
Yeah, and you know, I'll just add that the work of Protect Our Defenders and other organizations that focus on these issues could not do what we do without the voices of you, Melissa, and you, Lucy, and the countless others who are brave enough to share their stories. And I really mean what I say when I say brave, because I think what obviously sexual violence in any capacity is horrible and unacceptable, and workplace sexual assault, sexual violence, sexual harassment in any workplace is unacceptable and atrocious and abhorrent, and should be you know, shouldn't be a thing. But in the military in particular, and obviously, you know, you touched on this a little bit, both of you, is that it when you sign up, you know, you're signing up to put your life on the line for your country, and you're doing that with allegedly brothers and sisters in arms who are going to have your back. And when those same brothers and sisters are perpetuating sexual violence or sexual harassment against you, and not only that, but then if you're trying to report and the chain of command, or your commander, or your, you know, in the case if you go all the way up to court martial, your convening authorities, like, you know, like we don't believe you, we don't, not only that, but we like this guy who you're alleging assaulted you, you know.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Which Lucy will go into. Are you sure this happened to you?
Are you sure this happened to you? And I didn't know what to think. That's the way I was treated. And again, you know, you were saying that you're supposed to be in a brotherhood. You're supposed to be in a sisterhood. It's supposed to be this avenue of camaraderie that is supposed to be very embracing. And I'm not saying that I never received that in the military, because I did. There was pockets of my service that it was a lot of camaraderie. I felt very safe. It was a really good kindred spirit. I'm still, you know, very actively involved in many of those relationships with many people that I met in the military. But there was that one small pocket of where I just felt completely violated. And it's funny that one small pocket is really how I look at my military. That's where I see it as tarnished. And it was, it's hard to actually try to explain to people how it just started. And then you use your gut instinct, like something's gonna happen, but you just don't know if it's a mechanism for the person that is actually, you know, for me, eventually became the person who assaulted me. Was at first very tactical? Was he just trying to see what he was going to get out of me? But it was just, again, it was kind of like, you know, going in for the kill when you're in the hunt type of feeling, is that they questioned me over him because of his length of time, how many stripes he had on his uniform, what his service looked like, all his brass, where my brass was very tiny at the point because I was just a PFC. So it just, again, it's very that, are you sure statement is something that has plagued me for it's plaguing me now. It's going to plague me for eternity. And, it just shouldn't be asked. It should be like, okay, what happened and how could we help you? Because I wish that was the statement that was made to me, like, please, Lucy, tell, PFC Chinea, what happened? What could we do for you? How could we help you? Opposed to get dressed, get to the office, and are you sure this has happened to you? And that's again, those are words that I will always hear.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's that trauma. That's that big T trauma, as I call it. It follows us. Like that was my long-winded way of saying it. It follows us through our lives. It follows us in our PTSD claims. Claiming PTSD from MST. I know this is all acronyms, but post-traumatic stress disorder, for those who are familiar from military sexual trauma, it's real. And it presents and manifests in many ways. That self-doubt, that questioning of yourself, it's gaslighting on an institutional level. And it's something that is far too common. And I know, Adelaide, you've probably heard one, if you've heard 1,000 stories, if you heard one, like Lucy's, like how many are under E4 and below, like, initial active duty entry? How many MST survivors are you aware of that are at those vulnerable ranks, like Lucy said?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to both of your points, the higher up the chain of command you go, the less I don't want to, I guess accountability is the right word, because for this type of crime, because the more insular the community becomes, the higher up you go, the smaller the officer pool becomes. And the fact that there are so few general officers, and in the case of the Air Force, there's no general officers who've ever gone to court martial, and we all know that
none.
we
Wow.
clean, yeah. So, and there's only been a handful of Army general officers. So so that's why I use the word brave, because it's really, you're so brave, and I appreciate you guys being honest, open and honest, because I think you're heroes and you're exceptionally brave. But the fact that, to your other point, Melissa, is that I think what also is unique to military sexual violence is that you're constantly having to prove to everyone, to your chain of command, to the VA, to your peers, that this happened. And it's not only are you trying to confront that within yourself, but you're trying to literally prove to everyone around you that this happened and that you need help.
Yeah.
And it seems so counter to where we are now. I mean, we're 3 years into the Me Too movement and Believe Women, and yet this is still the default. And I think it's also a contributor to the rage that we all felt over Vanessa Guillen. That collective rage is because we're 3 years into the slogans, and when is it going to finally trickle down to the military? I'm sorry, Lucy, I cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. You didn't cut me off at all. But it's interesting of the words, the use of bravery, the use of heroes, because when I think of a hero and I think of bravery in the military, it's because of being affected by, going to deployments, being affected by the war, coming home, as a brave soldier and a hero. I never intended to want to put my name with those connections, because I spoke up about military sexual trauma. And to me, that's something that, again, like you're saying, I took a walk to this weekend with a friend who was stationed with me when I was assaulted. And he was the primary reason why I actually decided to dive into this Vanessa Guillen case, because he, you know, I tried to stay away from it because it was really triggering me. Every time I saw, you know, I witnessed a news report, I was really having an issue with it. So I was kind of trying to stay away from it. And then, you know, he picked up the phone, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, fine. And he's like, can't look at that picture without thinking of you. And, you know, you were 20, she was 20. You know, there was just too many like coincidence, you know, there was just too much likeness. And then I decided to really explore. And again, I look at Vanessa right now as a hero. I look at her for being brave. But again, I didn't want to put those words to her name because of her leaving us the way she did. And I don't want those names, you know, to be the hero, to be brave, because I decided to, you know, I made the decision when I was asked to testify to accept and say what happened to me. So it's a double-edged sword, because I, as much as I want to advocate and I want to tell people what my fight is, every day it just turns into, again, like we were talking, whirlwind of emotions, because at times I don't feel like we should add those names to it, but yet I don't want another woman, I don't want another man, I don't want any of us to experience what we have faced, because even the aftermath of, you know, after leaving the military, and then what has followed me, you know, I almost became homeless. I had a hard time finding a job. I had a hard time, you know, really adjusting to who Lucy was prior to the assault. And that's something that, again, it's an adjustment, and I want everybody to really take a look at that how structurally that's not what you think the military is actually going to do to you. So
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring that up, Lucy, because it's like we talk about now in the conversation structural racism and structural barriers that hold folks back, and you just described how MST becomes a structural barrier within the structural barrier. So on the one hand, as I'm like you, you know, I've often been told you're the humble vet, and you know, it's because we don't see ourselves as heroes. I mean, we wouldn't be answering to a call greater than ourselves if we did. You know, I don't know too many people who do that, but we're not going to have change, cultural change, to where this is no longer acceptable, no longer this permissive environment like they talked about earlier, until we have more women in the ranks. Well, that's a 30-year pipeline. Like you were talking earlier, Adelaide, about, you know, the general officers, the lack of accountability rather for general officers. Right now, the commanding general, Fort Hood's under investigation, and rightfully so, because outside of even Vanessa Guillen's case, like 28 other soldiers have turned up dead in 2020 alone under mysterious causes. So, you know, it's insane, the lack of accountability, but you're not going to see that change until you frankly see more women who are within those senior officer ranks. We don't stay. I didn't stay, you know, I was an officer, I didn't stay. And it's because of environments like this, to where at some point you just say, I can't take this anymore. And it really does become an issue of where we want to be brand ambassadors for the military, because on the positive side, the military very much shaped who I am. And I know Lucy feels the same way. It very much shaped my morals, my ideals, and you know, I want to be a force for good within the national security arena today. And it's a part of my motivation for speaking about these atrocities now. But it's also not going to change if people don't stay on active duty. So we have a duty also to protect the you know, those who are coming up behind us, to make sure that they can continue to move forward in their careers. You mentioned earlier, you know, think about his career, and I'm tired of thinking about his career, frankly. You know, someone think about ours. And it's not even just for the junior women, but it's for the sake of women in the armed forces, period. We're in changing times, and this is one of the ways in which we need to adapt.
Yeah, and so Lucy, I really appreciate that. So I don't have a military background. I've been in this world though for the last 5 years. I am a survivor of sexual assault, but not military sexual assault. So I want to totally, with respect to everything you said, because I totally understand, but I think the reason why I use those words, and I don't know if maybe this is, but I feel like, it's reclaiming that status. And I feel that, because and you guys too, there's so many service members whose careers are ended because of this. And sometimes they get the punishment that their assailant should be getting. And then they end up with an other than honorable or general under conditions discharge, and they're not told that they're brave or they're heroes or they're even honorable. And I feel that and it's like reclaiming that, like you do deserve this. This is what you are, and I, with total respect to anybody who's served in combat and any, it's different, but it's no less, to me, no less powerful. But anyway, it's just
no, you don't have to apologize.
No, never apologize.
No apology. Yeah, no. Well, first of all, we need to, as women, get into a no apology zone. Like myself, I think I'm mostly talking to myself as I'm saying this. We need to just get into a no apology zone, because Lord knows, I'll leave it at that. But no, you're right, Arlene, in that it's just hard to see yourself that way, because it's a time that you also associate with probably your most weakest and vulnerable moments of your life, to where you couldn't do anything. And whether it's one assault incident or multiple, or if it's harassment, that just, I feel like, I think if you haven't been harassed, you haven't lived, to be a woman, we're almost desensitized by it at this point. And so when we talk about the violence that's committed against our bodies, no, you're absolutely right to reclaim that, because that is at the crux of it, of being a survivor, is being able to step forward and say that, yes, I am taking this back and I am reclaiming this for myself and for womankind, for survivor kind. So, and please do not minimize your own experiences to those of us in the military. I mean, like I said, the only difference that I see with military sexual assault, well, two differences. One, the law, which, we can get into some of that in a second. But so the law, obviously, the Uniform Code of Military Justice governs it differently. But then secondly, what makes military sexual violence a little bit different is, again, that institutional aspect of it. And that, let's walk the dog of whether you've been assaulted, you report it. Do they believe you? Is your assailant prosecuted? Are you then counter prosecuted in a sense, and that you're victim blamed and you're told, well, what were you wearing? Where were you going? What were you doing? All the same tropes that you hear in a civilian world. But then from there, it can end up with, we talked about discharges. And so for the civilian audience, and other than honorable, can screw up your whole life.
Oh yeah.
It can screw your whole life, because that goes on every job application. Have you served? Did you serve honorably? And if you don't have that honorable discharge, it can impact your benefits. It can impact your, we work very hard to fix that, but I still hear of cases of people not receiving proper mental health care, because of their other than honorable status. It impacts a lot of things, and it almost leaves you with this scarlet A on your forehead. It almost leaves you with feeling like you're less than, because you didn't get an honorable discharge, and you were the one who was assaulted. Yeah,
the scarlet M, let's call it the scarlet M of military sexual trauma. But when we talk about words, if I have to describe myself, I feel like I became very resilient, and I became a more empathetic human being. I became more compassionate. I felt like I became more aware of how others are being affected by something that is going to change their life. And yes, mine was based on an assault, but I was talking to someone about grief, and I felt that this whole process of being a military sexual trauma survivor is about, it's like a grieving process, because that in that moment in time, I'm constantly grieving about me, about the loss of myself, the loss of Lucy after that happened, because I will never be the same. And I once in a while look back to how Lucy was prior to her assault, and there's little nuances of Lucy that I wish I could find and I wish I could get back. And that's where you know, those words of grief and compassion and resilience, and you know how you know, those strength values that are something that I kind of like to relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then I think that we're all struggling for that normalcy, whether you're a survivor of military sexual assault or sexual assault outside of the military. Everyone is still struggling to reach that level of normalcy. Like I said, it gaslights you when you go through these when you go through something like this. And the problem now today, I shouldn't say there's many problems, but again, part of why there's so much emphasis on it today, now in 2020, is because we're all sitting at home watching, you know, seminars, webinars, you know, things like this, and thinking, my God, if it happened to me, it's happened to anyone. And there's finally this wake up call that's coming about to where, you know, finally our movement's getting some real traction in the mainstream. Because that's the other, I think, fallacy. I said there are two things about military sexual violence that that separated apart from the civilian world. But one third thing is that I don't think that folks realize the magnitude of the problem. I don't think that they realize how much we carry with us for a lifetime. And I think there's also really terrible civilian perception out there that we kind of, you know, ask for it. You know, well, why would you? It's a man's world. What do you mean? What do you expect? So, and I think I said that in the beginning, you know, the price of admission for the military shouldn't be sexual assault, especially, you know, when you consider cases like mine. I'm a third generation combat veteran. You know, my grandfather was killed in National World War II. He's a Buffalo soldier. My father fought in Vietnam, retired after 27 years. And so it's a tradition, it's a family tradition that I'm upholding that. And I'm not unique in that regard. Many of us uphold these family traditions, and it feels like your family let you down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times it feels like your family let you down. And so there's a lot out there that I think is finally being teased out and added to the thread of the sexual assault conversation, especially vis-a-vis military. I know that we're all, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I don't know if we want to, you know, pivot toward, you know, what we're doing now and some of the work we're doing now. Like, I'm excited that we finally have legislation like the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill that I think we've all fought for in various ways, because a lot of folks think, oh, well, wow, that was short order. Nothing in Congress is short order. This isn't something that went from flash to bang, so to speak, from July 2nd to now. This has been years in the works. And again, a lot of the work is through POD, through Protect Our Defenders, you know, recommendations that you've made to armed services committees for years.
Yeah, and I think we should totally talk about this new legislation, but I think it would be helpful, in case there are civilian listeners out there, to just briefly describe kind of, you know, why, because I think the thing that I am always struck by, and I was so too when I was engaging with this work, is how do not more people know about this problem and how messed up this system is. Because every time we tell people who are new to this topic, they're always like, oh, you know, jaw on the ground, like, how does nobody, you know, I swear if everybody knew that this was so broken, if this was such the case, that there would be a riot. And I'm like, well, people do know, and there hasn't necessarily been a riot. So but I do think that education is key. And
there's so much education that really needs to take place. For me, I'm really looking at the education within the Latino community and the Black and Brown communities, because we get targeted so much in the recruiting aspect of it. You know, I'm a perfect example of, I joined the military because at the time my dad passed away. We couldn't afford multiple daughters in the military in school, so I had to find an opportunity to get to seek money to go to school. So I went the military like my two brothers did. We went into the military way of life. So again, the recruitment tactics, you know, I had a really incredible conversation with Vanessa's father when we were at the bill introduction. And he goes to me, Lucy, why is it that they do such heavy recruiting in our areas? And I go, you know why? Because we need it. We are looking for that way out. We are trying to better our lives. We are trying to establish that legacy. You heard time and time again how Vanessa, from a young age, wanted to protect and serve her country. She wanted to create that legacy in the military, and then it was taken away from her. And again, we didn't protect her that way. And then her dad is like, I didn't know what questions to ask. And that again is the lack of education, that a lot of people don't know that our civilian laws and our military laws are night and day. And so, you know, you don't know how to you could ask a question as a civilian, but you're not going to get the same answer when you're addressing the military. And that to me is something that, again, we kind of have to really do our due diligence when we go into the Latino communities, when we go into the Black and brown communities, and tell them, you know, we don't want to say they're occupational hazards because they slightly have become that, but we have to kind of tell folks, hey, things could possibly happen. And if they do happen, they're not going to be treated the same way as they are in the civilian space. So that's something that I've been really trying to look at, of how we could educate more of the communities that are really being focused on when it comes to heavy recruitment areas.
Oh,
That's
totally.
an interesting take. Yeah, because I mean, it's the same. I mean, Black and brown community. I mean, I mentioned my grandfather, Buffalo Soldier. I bring that up because for the Black community, the military has always been a pathway to the middle class. It's been the one thing that we could do, even in slavery, to be able to, frankly, fight for your freedom. And in the Latina community, like right now, the message is, well, you can get, there's a pathway to citizenship. It's a pathway to citizenship for your family.
And
We hear, yeah, and education. And so, you know, education and citizenship. And so that's always been the, you know, the carrot and stick that they've baited us with. And it's an honorable one. It really is. Like, I don't want to disparage, like, I go back to what I said before, we're supposed to be brand ambassadors for the military. Like, I want other women to serve. I want them to know what it's like to command troops and to feel that authority within yourself, because it's denied to us in so many spaces. And, you know, it's not all terrible, you know, and that's what I really would love to be the message that comes out of this once we fix this cultural problem, in that we're not the secretary pool anymore. And even when we were the secretary pool, it didn't mean that we were a pool for your picking and choosing and pillaging, frankly. And that's, you know, I think what's sadly been the evolution of women, pretty much in the military, in the American military. We've been fighting to serve and fighting for our respect and our parity since the Revolutionary War. And so I'm glad you brought that up, Lucy, because yes, we are targeted, and it's actually almost a little bit sad in the way in which you mentioned it, because it makes me feel, it reminds me of the talk that we talk about, you know, in the Black community. And so you ever get pulled over, these are things that you need to know. And, you know, in having the talk from a military perspective, like, I can't imagine, you know, I joined in the 90s like you did. I can't imagine my father telling me then, hey, you know, you just might get raped. So, you know, let's talk about when that happens, or when your CO walks up to you, your commanding officer, and compliments your outfit. What do you say? Why, you say, yes, sir. Thank you. No, I mean, I can't imagine my father, of all people, you know, saying that or having that, but it seems to be kind of like, it's almost necessary to have that conversation of knowing what you're getting into. And that's sad.
And it's very, and it's very interesting that you say that, because my brother was my recruiter. So my brother took me through every step of the process to go into the military. And now he, you know, once a month or once a week, or when he's, you know, he sees me like in the media, he's like, he calls me and he's like, I'm sorry I did this to you. I'm like, you didn't do this to me. You didn't do this to me. You brought me into your ranks because your army, your
Mhm.
military space was good to you, and you expected that same treatment for your sister, and it just didn't work that way. So it's not your fault. And I constantly have to remind him that. So
Yeah, it's nobody's expectation whatsoever.
yeah.
With this, and I will say that I think what is striking too, and I learned this recently from a client of mine who really said too that the Black female experience in the military is also very different from the Black male experience, and that is a
Yep.
lot in part due to the you know, like the way that the uniforms are made,
Mm-hmm.
making
Oh yes.
hair. Like, I mean,
Us,
Yep.
yeah, us Latinas feel the same way because again, the military is structurally created for the male,
for the
and you would think by now they would make adjustments so it would be somewhat female friendly, but that hasn't taken place. So uniforms are cut differently, protective gear is cut differently. It uniquely looks incredibly different on us than it
Yeah.
does on our male
Or it doesn't
counterpart.
protect our lives.
Or it doesn't
I
protect
didn't-
our lives.
When I first deployed to Iraq, I didn't have sappy plates or armor plates to go on your flat jacket because I needed extra small ones, and they were on back order. And I said, "Well, was the war on back order?" Like, why
Exactly.
I didn't have them until 3
Yeah,
months
please
into my
tell
deployment.
Yeah, exactly. And again, they're not created for us. And again, what looks like on a male does not look like on a female. And I remember being on a TDY deployment, and they wouldn't let me wear my PT uniform, like the shorts and the t-shirt. They were like, "Oh, could you wear the sweatpants?" I'm like, "It's 110 degrees out here. You want me to wear sweats?" But that's what they asked me to do because again, I didn't look the certain way and they didn't want those eyes on me. And I'm like, then create something that's going to be okay for a woman to wear. If it's such an issue that you feel that my appearance in my uniform is being suggestive, then there's an issue and you guys haven't rectified it. And that's where it's a struggle. It really is a struggle.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent segue into how the structure is inherently kind of focused on. I mean, okay, look, let's be real. Like, our society is you're innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying like let's throw law and order out the window, but at the same time, in the military, there is a preponderance of doubt given to the survivor, and there it's an uphill battle, and it's like even the prevention things, like get a battle buddy, so I want to talk about how, like, it's like the survivor's responsibility to protect themselves against the big bad, male pig who's, out there raping people with no accountability.
Right. Again, and let me give you another example of that. Like, I for every data point you throw out, I could give you a real life example that I actually went through or knew someone else did. So let's talk about like have a battle buddy, for example. So again, you don't have my sappy plates on, ready for me when I've got to go deploy. So I'm just in a war zone walking around with useless flak jacket. Okay, cool. I'm also working a swing shift because I was intelligence. And so that meant that in the middle of the night, I'm walking around base, walking around, like this is not, outside the wire. It's not going on patrols, those things, not scary in comparison. You know what's scary? Walking by yourself to a latrine in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. Walking by yourself to a porta-john in the middle of Baghdad when you know that you are out there by yourself and, you could possibly hear a pin drop. I cannot tell you how many assaults took place. I was actually in command at the time then. Both the ones that reported to me and then also my own, I call them sticky situations of where I was confronted. Was something along the lines of, what are you doing out here this late at night? Well, I mean, it's my effing job. So that's why I'm here. And I'm not going to look for a battle buddy so that I can go, use the restroom like my male counterparts don't have to do. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of that stuff I just really just suppressed. I pushed it down like a trash compactor, especially when I was outnumbered as a woman, and then even as a woman officer. That made me even feel more useless sometimes to protect my troops. to protect the women in my charge who would come to me for help. You know, it was all of us against them. And sometimes it could be multiple voices against one. Where does that work out? But again, you see the preponderance of evidence, you know, it doesn't always favor the survivor. And that's because the military justice system is still very much subjective. I keep going back to sexual harassment because I truly believe that it establishes a permissive environment for bad behavior. And that's not a crime. That is not a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And hopefully that's going to change, you know, with this pending legislation. But, you know, I mean, things like that, like things that would seem so simple, are not a part of our Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Right, and so for bird's eye view again, it's all very insular. The Uniform Code of Military Justice exists because, you know, we have stations all over the world. It's been in existence since 1951. It also has a very unique military specific rule of law that wouldn't translate at all to the civilian world. But it has been very slow to adapt to, because if it's going to be also kind of, if there are going to be laws that cover other crimes, like felonious crimes that would otherwise be covered in the civilian system, it's got to be comprehensive. And I think that the fact that sexual harassment is not considered a punitive offense under the UCMJ is shocking to people. Because, and I think that I was trying to explain this to somebody else the other day, that I think sexual harassment in the military is a whole other beast than it is elsewhere, because it is so baked into the culture, to the, you know, to the, back when military unit, there weren't any women in the military, and misogynistic language was used as a dehumanizer to men who underperformed. And it's these people who grew up with that being the status quo are still in the military. They're at the highest ranks right now. And so, you know,
and grooming future leaders.
And exactly, it's that culture of toxic leadership. It's like, you know, it's like that whole let's call it frat mentality of the hazing ceremony. And again, you know, it hasn't changed. It's been very static. And again, you would think with the entrance of more and more women into the military that they would kind of had taken a step back and say, hey, let's make that change. And they still haven't done it. And again, when you look at realistically, let's look at the frat mentality. That's why when I talk to survivors of military sexual trauma that are my male counterparts, again, it was like they always refer, some of them, I don't want to say all of them, some of them have said, you know, they referred it to as I was being hazed. And I'm like, I don't care what they refer it to. Assault, a haze is being assaulted, whether you like it or not. And this entrance into what they call their brotherhood is not acceptable. It really isn't. And I shouldn't have had to pay and live the way I live right now because I was trying to make an entrance into a brotherhood that I never wanted to, you know, make an acceptance to. And again, I think the way the laws that have, again, the way it's just stays static, and how I said gorilla glue to the ground, that's what they've done. They've just stuck it there. They don't want to change it. And until we really start making the noise that we're making right now, and hopefully those changes will be made, harassment is still going to take place. I bet you right now we're having this conversation, and I would say 200 women in the military are being harassed right now because of the way they look, the way they sound, you know, or something to that effect. And it's just, again, it's culturally acceptable to be harassed in the military, which is not acceptable at all.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I think what, so related to the grassroots movement that you guys have been a part of, you guys got to testify on the Hill. How long ago was it? A couple of weeks ago? I feel like it's
a couple of years ago. It's 2020.
It feels like a couple of, July 20.
But it was July
29th.
Oh God,
July
sorry.
29th.
Yeah. So, and I think what has been amazing, and I'd love for you guys to talk about, I think it would be great to talk about kind of the things that this bill might do to change the culture, because this, you know, ending on kind of a transformative, you know, here's this direction that we may be headed into finally. You guys, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all and what you guys have been able to do with this and where we're going.
Yeah, so we, Lucy and I did testify on July 20th before the House Armed Services Committee Military Personnel Subcommittee. So
Right.
that's chaired by
No, July 20th is when we did the call to action.
yeah,
The
20th is call
21st,
to
and then the
action.
29th
Yes.
is the day
And
we
the 29th is the
testified.
hearing. Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's
So-
been a whirlwind,
Very
but the same token, again,
Yeah.
2020. Like, wait, what year was that? So like I
all
stepped back and
blending together, all blending together.
like Robin Williams and Jumanji. What year is this? So, but I digress. So the incomparable Chair Spear, Jackie Spear, who is also a survivor herself, who has always been no BS on this issue, and has been a champion for women and military women alike, and male survivors, I should say, all survivors. You know, so that's been really good in working with her office. A lot of good stuff made what I now call, even though I hate to use this term as a former legislative director, comprehensive bill. I hate saying comprehensive because it automatically makes people, oh, that sounds like a lot of stuff and it's going to cost money. Yeah, it's going to cost money. And yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but it's stuff that we've been saying for years. It's a combination of what was in previous iterations, the Military Justice Improvement Act, the STOP Act. These are other, you know, sexual assault bills that are geared toward ending sexual assault, or at least alleviating it within the military and in the civilian world, and combined into one. And so it does things like make sexual harassment a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. People will say, well, why does that need to be a crime? Because we need to take it seriously. Like, we need to start taking it seriously. Clearly, it's not being enforced in a by commands. Command climate is set from the top down by commanders. And if it's not been inculcated by now, it's never going to be. So now we just have to stop the slaps on the wrist and start with actual punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for harassment. That's all of the jokes, the innuendo, the stupid little things that, you know, we just kind of do and laugh about as a part of our soul dies inside. Those are the minor microaggressions, you know, like those, but those need to stop. And so that's number one. It takes the
right there. It's the micro.
Oh yeah, sure.
That expands that, like what I was saying, all of us have been saying, like it in a unit where you're supposed to have each other's back, all those microaggressions just build and build and build and build, and then
absolutely
a whole unit, a whole battalion, a whole service branch, a whole military that can't trust each other. But anyway, continue.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. It does like we talk all the time in the military about building esprit de corps and about unit cohesion, and this completely erodes and undermines that. If I'm fearful of my own unit when I'm walking to the latrine in the middle of the night, who's out there fighting alongside of me?
Exactly.
You know,
how can you command them if you can't trust them?
Exactly. So, you know, we see movies like Courage Under Fire where men turn on women, and, you know, like, I don't want to bring too much Hollywood into it, but yes, there's a lot that, you know, that your mind starts racing when you start thinking about those things. And my mind should even go in those directions, frankly. So that's one. The other thing that I'm glad about within this bill is that it's going to take the subjectivity of whether to prosecute out of the hands of commanders and the prosecution itself into special prosecutors who are trained to work with survivors. It's going to revamp, you know, that whole investigatory process and prosecution process, and it needs to happen. And I can tell you again, is, you know, I was commander of troops at the age of like 25. I don't know nothing at 25, and I mean, like, I'm being very good about not using curse words today, because I am military and that part didn't leave me. But I can tell you all the things I didn't know in 4-letter words when I was 25 years old, and I didn't even have the legal protections as a commander that a lot of folks have now, to where you can enforce reporting, enforce, you know, that that the soldier, the service member is taken care of. A lot of that wasn't there. And so what could happen is, again, realistic scenario, you could have a service member walk up to you, report being assaulted. And then you ask, do you want to report it? Formal chains? No. And they can end. Just like that. It could just end. There was no duty necessarily to report. You know, this is in the mid-aughts for me. There is no duty to report necessarily. And even when there was a duty to report, then might go the level higher. Let's say it goes above the company commander to the battalion commander. And battalion commander says, oh, yeah, but Sergeant so-and-so's career, that's who she's accusing? Yeah, we can't think about that. Sergeant so-and-so, come on over here. All right, you're going to go over to this unit. She's going to be in this building, and that's settled. And they settle it even through non-judicial punishment. Like, because you're already dealing with non-judicial punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice anyway. Like, let's understand to be clear about that.
I mean,
now
I was
completely taking justice
Yeah.
out of it when
Yeah.
you talk about it. But I mean, and that's even from what do you call it, benign neglect. That's from, you know, malevolent standpoint of where you're like, I really don't want to, you know, hurt this other person. And you're not really thinking of hurting the survivor at that point, but that's the bias that creeps in. That's that implicit bias that creeps in, especially the one where you don't believe survivors. And so this is why it's so important to take all of this out of the chain of command. Objective third parties who are trained to listen to survivors are critical in these situations.
Yeah. For me, it was one of the, you know, again, I was moved to a whole different continent. That's basically what they did to me. They're like,
rehabilitative transfer.
Yeah, let's
that's what we call it. We call it rehabilitative transfer.
Let's send you back to the United States, why don't we? And you'll do much better in the United States. But one of the things I think when we went into action, the grassroots, I'm one of those, I never go into anything with any type of expectation whatsoever, but I didn't expect it to take this momentum. It was like, you know, the small little snowball that goes into the monumental big, big snowball, because it just kept on going and just like traction, like, hey, we're doing the petition. Hey, we're going to, submit the petition. Hey, they asked you to testify, and oh my God, they're introducing the bill. And that was so like what just happened type of moment. Like it was very monumentous, but learning about so many different women that are out there that have been fighting this fight for such a long time, and talking to them and hearing their stories and sharing their components of this fight. Because again, you know, there's a lot of people out there that says, well, I did this. And, you know, again, I know what I did. I know what I've contributed to this and to this fight, what Melissa did, what our grassroots is, you know, NVA, and, you know, not our, you know, minority vets, not our Marine Corps, Pink Berets, you know, the list goes on and on. There's a multitude of us that have been working, really driving this and forceful. And some people that have been behind the scenes because, you know, the way their jobs are, they're not allowed to give, you know, their names out. But it's been this cohesion of very powerful, and this is where I'm going to say very powerful women, very powerful men, because I can't tell you how many men have reached out to me and said, hey, Lucy, thank you. And giving us a voice, and the Latino community, the Black and Brown community, because again, it's not one specific, it's very intersectional, the way this fight has taken, because again, it affects every single one of us, whether you want to look at it, people want to look at it, or it's just going to change structurally the culture of the military. And that's something that toxic culture just has to leave the door. It's like, I'm tired of it already. And it's 2020. It's been, I'm waiting for, you know, Tippi Hedren to show up on my front porch with the birds. You know what I mean? That's what I'm waiting for. But again, I never expected this to take place, and then for it to move the way it did. And I'm super proud of all the work that all of us have done, the three of us in here, because we've had some very interesting conversations. We've had, we agree to disagree, but we disagree to agree to a certain level when it comes to this type of work. And again, the cohesion that I've experienced is nothing like it. And again, I hope, I really pray that we here, the three of us and everybody that's been around us working aggressively with us, we're going to say that we are the ones that made this change. Because again, there's a multitude of women who have been working tirelessly. And in order for us to get this going, we have to always continue to work together. So, and there's our time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a perfect note that I know we need to wrap this up, and this is our time, and that's exactly what I was going to say. This is our time. This is our time for military. This is our time for civilians. This is a time for allies. It's all in, all hands. You know, it's not lost on anyone that we have a challenging year. We're you know, heading into the election under auspicious circumstances. Let's put it that way, as I talk through my teeth like this. And so, you know, what I tell everyone is strap in, because we have a lot of fights ahead of us, but this is a fight we're going to win. We are going to end MST. It's starting, it started decades ago, but it's culminating with this movement. And my parting words to this audience, you know, tuning in, is I hope that if you're a civilian, you understand a little bit more about what's happening in the military, and you're there to support, because we need it. We need for you to contact your members of Congress, to contact, you know, the members in the House and in the Senate. Once the Senate bill is introduced, the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill, it will go a long way for building our next future leaders, because this is a national security crisis. Military sexual trauma is a national security crisis. We don't have enough women in the ranks because we don't have enough brass. And we don't have enough brass because we're discouraged from leaving the pipeline too soon. And whether that's civilian or military, if you want to see change, you want to see a woman as Secretary of Defense at some point, then we need your help too. And so that's why I'm eternally grateful to you, Adelaide, and to Protect Our Defenders, and to all the groups that have been continuing to buoy this this issue this summer. With all the things happening in our country right now, this is one thing we can all roll up our sleeves and do something about.
Yeah, and I know we're out of time, but I'll just say I thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope this has been an enlightening conversation. It certainly has been for the three of us. And I will say, just my last words are, you know, we've had tailhook, we've had, you know, we've had kind of moments where you'd think reform would come, and I'm not saying there's been reforms made, but I really hope that this is the last time we're talking about this in this way, and that going forward with this momentum, and we could use all the help we can get, as Melissa so eloquently put it, and Lucy, you know, we need this to continue so that we're not having this conversation again in 10 years. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much. I Am Vanessa Guillen bill. Contact your members of Congress.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley here, representing the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District. I want to begin by thanking the Survivors Agenda for convening us today. It is both an honor and a privilege to join you in virtual community. Now, for generations, survivors and advocates have fought to shine a light on harassment and abuse. We have shown up, we have marched, we have told our stories. We know that most of the work doesn't take place in public. It is in the late night phone calls when our trauma wraps us up in a chokehold. It is in the tearful conversations whispered in confidence. It is the slow and steady work of helping each other heal and rebuild. I speak from personal experience when I say the path often isn't linear. For many, getting to that first step can take years, if they ever arrived there. At times, we find ourselves on the precipice of a political or cultural breakthrough, it seems. Folks are often inclined to claim a lucky break, a strike of lightning, or a once-in-a-generation moment. But behind every breakthrough, every movement that caught fire and captivated the nation, there are hours of sweat equity invested in the struggle for justice. Now, as we work towards a more just nation, it is critical that we fortify ourselves with a vivid image of what the future looks like. A day to come where we walk amongst our brothers and sisters in community, in a nation that lives its values out loud, a world that not only believes survivors and centers their struggle for justice, but also holds consent, bodily autonomy, and liberation and safety as the standard. I've said to survivors at organizing meetings, in personal conversations, and on the floor of the House of Representatives that what I want for every survivor is justice. I firmly believe that justice is a critical step step in our healing as individuals and as a survivor tribe. We know the statistics are startling. Less than 1% of perpetrators are brought to justice in a court of law. But when I speak of justice, the future I dream of is not actually defined by the confines of a courtroom or even trauma-informed judges on the bench, though yes, that would be a victory. The justice I seek is bolder. I seek a world where survivors are believed and validated and supported. I also want a world where within a generation, the number of those impacted by sexual violence plummets. I reject any narrative that says that we as a society have to tolerate this behavior. When we look at what informed policy has done to stave off deaths caused by drunk driving or gun violence, at least in developed countries aside from the United States, I am emboldened. I dream of a world where consent is taught at the youngest age, where we invest in breaking down the intersectional barriers of systemic oppression and abject poverty that too often leave folks rendered voiceless, and a world where we provide the economic opportunity and mobility that enables strong, healthy relationships and community that can protect us in moments of vulnerability. Our stories, the inflection points of the survivor community organizing, and our collective power, they matter. As a survivor, I struggled for years to tell my own story, and I know how it feels to be a survivor in a country where believing and supporting survivors has become a partisan issue, where survivors are made to feel marginalized and ostracized, where we've had to weaponize our very traumas just to be seen, heard. I share my story because it is part of my own ongoing healing, and because I know that sharing my story can provide others with agency too. Since I began sharing my story publicly, I've been humbled and moved by how many survivors approach me to share their stories, folks from every station in life and every background. At a walk for the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, which I've participated in every year for a decade now, a woman approached me, and she told me that hearing my story encouraged her to tell her daughter and her husband about the assault that she had experienced decades ago. In fact, she had been coming to this march, this walk for years, supporting her daughter who was a survivor. And her daughter didn't know all along that her mother was a survivor too. Experiencing assault can send us reeling, make us feel voiceless, marginalized in deep and dark ways that I still struggle to put words to. But I know in my own healing, reclaiming my agency over my story has been an important part of my moving forward. Survivors should be able to disclose when, how, and whom they want to. A colleague confided in me how liberated he felt when a friend reminded him that he is in control of whom he discloses to. There is no shame, no fault for him to hold, and it should be his choice when he's called upon to share his story. Assault steals our agency, so reclaiming our agency as we heal is critical. It does not get easier to disclose. The phrasing comes to me in a way that feels familiar now, but the words cut deep all the same every time. During my 2018 congressional campaign, many times well-intended journalists would engage me in a line of questioning that amounted to relitigating the details of my childhood sexual abuse and campus sexual assault. In those moments, I would aim for composure and grace, reminding myself that the public life I've chosen brings with it intrusive questions all the time. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like a second violation. Those interviews would be triggering and at times very frustrating for me and members of my staff who are also survivors. They would feel outraged at the line of questioning, and I would feel vulnerable. In those moments, I would try to remind myself that this is why we need survivors in positions of power and influence everywhere. We know that we carry our lived experiences into every space that we occupy. Creating real change requires continued movement and coalition building. It requires that more elected leaders listen to their constituents and keep themselves in close proximity to the pain. And it demands systemic change to ensure that our institutions of power more accurately reflect the diversity and lived experiences of those in our communities. Simply put, we belong everywhere, and our truths deserve to be whispered in the corridors of power and shouted from rooftops. We belong at every table, where decisions are being made about our lives, our livelihood, and our justice. Our lives, our stories, our struggles, and our healing matter. Audre Lorde reminds us that when we liberate ourselves, we liberate others too. Our movement builds when we elect survivors. Each time our government takes a step toward representing and valuing the diverse lived experiences of the American people, our policy becomes sharper, crisper, more responsive. Because when those with relevant firsthand experiences ask pointed questions, the air shifts, the conversation changes. It does not mean that we aren't still healing. It does not mean that we don't still simultaneously hold fears and hopes and a deep sense of responsibility. But every survivor that sits upon the dais, leads proceedings in a committee hearing, or calls for a federal investigation acts not only on their behalf, but on behalf of thousands who are united through a shared experience. Real and lasting change can take hold as we claim our seats at the tables of power. And believe me, we are just getting started.
You just heard from Representative Presley. Thank you so much for your leadership and your wisdom and sharing with us in these last moments of the first ever Survivor Summit. I also want to thank all of the speakers who participated over these last 3 days. We value your experience and your vision, and we have been grateful to have you inside of this space. My name is Danny Ayers. I'm with Me Too International, home of the Me Too movement, founded by Tarana Burke. We're now at the conclusion, as I said, of this first ever Survivor Summit. And as part of the Survivors Agenda team, we want to thank you all for being here. We hope that you felt inspired and that you feel inspired. We hope that you feel seen. We hope that you're excited to be part of this vital conversation. I also want to thank the steering committee organizations and the individuals who took part in making this summit happen. I also want to thank our community partners who helped to amplify this work so that we could bring you all into this conversation. We want to urge you that if you're not already, to get involved with an organization that's working to end sexual violence, whether it be policy work, whether it be healing, organizing. We urge you to get involved. We also urge you to get involved in getting out the vote, especially during this election season. Many of the organizations who took part in making the Survivors Agenda happen are ramping up this work right now. And finally, we hope that you visit survivorsagenda.org and stay tuned. There was so much great content submitted for the summit, we couldn't fit it all in. So we're going to have a post-summit series so that folks can still engage and we can present this amazing content to the world. And to close us out, I now want to introduce Rhapsody. If you have not seen Rhapsody perform, you are in for a treat. Her artistry is simply amazing. Thank you for being part of the first ever Survivors Agenda, and we will see you in these virtual streets.
Check 1 2 1 2. I am Jamla Records, Rock Nation representative Rhapsody. We appreciate you coming to the event today. Respect, appreciation, support of women, Black women, ladies all across the world. Sisters, I just want to talk to you if it's all right. And since we all came from a, got our name from a, and I gained from a woman, I wonder why we take from a, why we, do we? Brothers, I love you. I love you. I hate to know some of you treat us like Glover. Black card revolt, maybe you could use Discover. Define yourself, do you feel the same way about your mother? Do you overlook our beauty, but you loving on all the others? Hope you teach your daughters all to stay away from suckers like yourself. If you don't love yourself, I'm so southern. I was taught to feed the soul with or without hot ovens. Here's a plate. Know your hate come from a black man's struggle. We all in the same shape, so I know I fit your puzzle. Either way, we got your back. We only pray you be our muscle. Strength in the times, we all overcome with trouble. Every day we pulling doubles for ourselves and home. My mom and daddy taught me early on, protect your own. We never stop loving you, so turn your love back on. And I pray you feel the same way as that Tupac song. We ain't your hoes or your bitches. Trophies are meant for pimping. Recognize a gift from God, always a birthday or a Christmas to protect our lives. You gonna take it to the limit? Rib about rib, do you still feel the same you sing? Got our name and our game. I wonder why we do we play that thing, Duran? That's since we all got a and That's right. I wonder why we take from our, why we rape our, do we hate our? PJ told me to tell you that. Yeah, where would you be, fellas, if we weren't here with you? If you don't hear nobody say it, ladies, please know we appreciate you. The way you walk, the way you talk, sisters. And then we got brilliant minds. There ain't nobody better, yeah. Peace and love to the sisters. But let's turn it up a notch and tell them again about the real. What? Y'all bogus. Real goofy. I ain't never lost focus. What? Hey. The dark flesh, Bob Marr, speak mine. What you thought them 99 problems was? War on drugs, legality. They got us on fallacies. Recorded in casualties. I was supposed to resort in the Maldives now. We in the rallies now. Boxing in IG now. Boxing in IG in the memory. Pouring Hennessy and boom, boom, shot. Reaching for the ID. Get on my neck, nigga, unless you Cuban link. I think like the Cubans think. You never get a side of back. Got your back, T. Mallory. Carry on like a Prada bag. Dogs with me like they caught a lab in the backseat of a patrol car. That's luck. They ain't called a coroner. Should be Hall of Fame. Corridor. The way we run it back. You think it's 63? I think it's 63s. 180 degrees. Get your shit straight. Mr. Police did the same thing. The co-chief did the same thing. The Raheem do the same thing. In our reality, I got